preacher's kid. And two things I know how to do. Speak long and walk around. I'm going to try to abbreviate all those things. Before we get into writing the personal statement, I'd like to talk a little bit about why people go to law school. There are some people who go to law school because they want to know what lawyers know. Those are people who have a clear understanding of the kind of law they want to practice. They want to do corporate law, intellectual property law, tax law, criminal law, civil rights law. They are very specific about the kind of law they want to practice. It's very substantive. Those are the kind of people who go to law school and who write a personal statement about that. And then there's some people who go to law school because they want to do what lawyers do. They don't necessarily know what kind of law they want to practice, but they know that they like the whole process of litigation, the process of putting together legislation, the process of putting together public policy, the art and science of managing a trial, the art and science of management. A lot of things you can do with a law degree. So those are people who say, I'm not sure what area of law I want to practice, but I know that there are certain skill sets that law school will take advantage of. I'm also going to give you something else. Here are the 6 skill sets that law school is going to take advantage of. Wherever you go, whether you go to Iowa, Harvard, Maryland, Touro, St. John's, doesn't matter. Here are the 6 skill sets. Law school is going to make you read a lot. More than you ever thought you want to read. It's going to make you read a lot. It's going to make you write a lot. The most important skill you can bring to your law school classroom is your ability to write. If you don't like to write, don't go to law school. If you like to write, get good at it. If you're not good at it, get good at it and get really, really good at it. You've got to be a freaky good writer in law school. It's not a mistake that some of the most well-known novelists and writers in this country went to law school. Well, I don't think they went to law school to learn how to write, but writing will certainly take advantage of that skill set. Writing is the most important skill you can bring to law school. Law school is going to make you read a lot, or research a lot. A lot of those papers you write are going to be research papers, so learning how to navigate a law library is going to be really important. It's going to make you think critically. Don't believe everything you see, read, or hear. There are always multiple sides to an issue. Have a healthy respect for history. Judges make decisions based on precedent, and precedent is just another name for history. Now, you don't have to be a history major, but having a respect for history is very important. And the final one is speak in public. At some point, you're going to have to get up and speak your mind, whether it's in front of a group of 6, or a group of 75 or 100, or a group of 330 million. At some point, you're going to have to speak in public. So, reading, writing, research, speak in public, think critically, healthy respect for history. Those are the big 6 things that law school is going to take advantage of. And there are some people who will say, I'm not sure what I want to practice, but I know that I'm pretty good at one of those skill sets. So at least there'll be at least one day in law school and I'm going to have a good time. The other 5 or 6 days is going to be a pain in the butt. But at least that one day when I have to read, write, research, speak in public, think critically, have healthy respect for history, those are going to be really, really fun days. All of those reasons are valid and legit. Then there are some people who want to go to law school because they want to know what lawyers know and do what lawyers do. Those are people who get a joint degree. JD MBA is a really good example of that. They want to understand the law, but they also want to understand and be sensitive to the management issues involved. Because if you're going to be a corporate lawyer, either in-house counsel or with a law firm that counsels corporations, you're going to have an understanding of what that business person is dealing with. And if you are able to do that, it's going to make you look pretty good and solve their problems because you have an understanding of what they're dealing with. And they don't have to sit there and say, okay, well, you know everything there is to know about the law, but you know nothing about my business. So now I'm going to have to teach you my business, which is something that I'm hoping I don't have to waste time doing. If you have at least an understanding how business and management works, you'll get a leg up. Every law school student needs to have the drive and determination to solve problems. This is the 4th reason why some people go to law school, and maybe the most important reason why any of you should go to law school. Solving problems is what you go to law school to do. Solving problems is actually what you go to graduate school to do. You go to undergrad to learn about the world. It's just my opinion. You go to undergrad to learn about the world. But you go to graduate school to learn a career. I went to business school to learn a career, specific areas of business that I'm now using in higher ed administration. You're going to law school so you can use the skills in law school to solve other people's problems. If you don't like solving problems, then graduate school is just not for you right now. Maybe at some point. Which leads to one other quick point I'm going to make. Don't be afraid to get work experience before law school. Average age at many law schools at most law schools, is around 24, 25, 26 years old. So most people have work experience. About 35 to 40% of the entering class nationally comes right out of undergrad, but about 60 to 65% have at least a year or two of work experience. The oldest person I've ever offered admission to in law school was 67 years old. The oldest person I've ever admitted and enrolled in the law school was 65 years old. He graduated at the age of 68, valedictorian of the class. So getting older is mandatory, but growing up is optional. Ever heard that term? Don't be afraid to get work experience. Okay, another way to look at this. What kind of problems do I like or want to solve? Again, some people want to go into the substantive areas of law. They have a clear understanding of criminal law or what they want to do. They want to go into criminal law, corporate law, environmental law, a specific area. The other is process. They're not sure what area of law they want to go into, but they like and want to understand the process of litigation, legislation, management, things like that. And then, of course, you have joint degrees. Again, I'm going to fly through this a little bit faster than I want to, just to save time. One other thing. At the end of this presentation is going to be my email address. If I go through this too quickly, or if you want a copy of this, email me. I will send you an email so that you don't have to write this thing down very quickly, okay? Send me an email, and I will send you a copy of this presentation, and you can use it for your purposes. I'll go over this again very quickly. Skills needed for law school success. Read, write, rewrite. And I put that in there because a lot of people come to law school thinking they know how to write, and knowing how to write and knowing how to write like a lawyer are two very different things. And so they'll get the first draft or the copies they give to the professor, and the professor will send it back to them all marked up. It's all got read it and on it, and they're all upset, angry, and wondering why they came to law school, or they'll think the professor is full of it and doesn't know what he or she is doing. Everyone is going to get their first drafts marked up to no end. Don't worry about it. They're trying to refine your talents and recreate your writing skills and make it better than what you thought it was. So rewriting is in there. Research a lot, speak in public, think critically, have a healthy respect for history, and then have patience with the process of learning. You all are bright, wonderful, intelligent, smart people, and you're all going to get into law school somewhere. Who knows where, but you're going to get in somewhere. So you're going to go to law school, and you're going to be in with a lot of other people who are bright, intelligent, and wonderful. And one of the things I've seen over the years I've been doing this is that there are certain students who come into law school, especially in the first semester of the first year, and they're not patient with the process. They don't let the process teach them what they need to know. The assumption on the part of the faculty is that you don't know anything. Okay? The assumption on the part of the faculty is that you're smart. You got into law school, so you're smart, but you don't know anything. And so what they're going to do is use the Socratic method to teach you how to think like a lawyer and how to write like a lawyer. So they're going to focus on your critical thinking skills, your writing skills, and that intellectual curiosity, and your ability to be patient with the process and let the process work itself. It's going to be foundational, okay? You're going to be working on the foundations so that you get into the spring semester of your first year, and your second and third years, you'll have those foundations down. So be patient with the process. Okay. Final slide I think I have on this is, think about a time when you solved a particularly interesting problem in your life. Next bullet point. What are you most excited about learning? Next bullet point. What skills or talents seem unrelated to your career, but that you enjoy pursuing? When I'm not working or taking care of my family, I'm an outdoorsy person. I love to fish, and something that you probably don't see here in Manhattan, at least I hope you don't see here in Manhattan, but in my state, deer hunting is a big deal. I do that. I don't have to, but it's just fun. And I give it all to a food bank, so don't think I'm one of these crazy people. You know, it's the thrill of the grill, not the thrill of the kill. The thrill of the grill. I'm also cooking it pretty well too when I have to. Okay? Well, if I went to law school, I would think about environmental law, because my passion is taking care of the environment and conservation issues. So I think about a degree or an area of law that would fit my passions, and that's what I would do. Think about an instance when things did not go as planned, and how did you handle it? And then take any of these questions, and then ask yourself right at the top. You can't see it all, but basically it says, how would having a law degree made any difference in solving that problem? Would a law degree, when you think about that problem that you're thinking about, or that group of issues, would a law degree have made any difference in how you solve it? And if not, then maybe law school isn't for you. Or maybe it isn't for you right now. Like I said, a lot of people go to law school 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. The previous presentation, the panel discussion, talked about the non-traditional is now the new norm, or something like that. What people used to consider to be a non-traditional student is now the traditional student. That's actually true. So, ask yourself how having a law degree would have made any difference. Okay, so now we get into the little more the meat of the personal statement, and I apologize. There's a curtain here that's cutting off the top of my slide. What is the personal statement designed to do? The personal statement is designed to tell the admissions committee what you really want it to know about you. There's 1 or 2 or 3 things that are driving you to go to law school. Okay? The LSAT isn't driving you to go to law school. The LSAT is an obstacle in the way of going to law school. GPA isn't necessarily driving you to go to law school. GPA is, I won't say an obstacle, it's just something you have to manage and do the best you can with and work through when you apply to law school, so you can apply to law school. Okay? The LSAT is a reflection of you based on a test that's been around since 1947. And it's been tweaked and changed a little bit over time. But it is, when used with the GPA, it is a pretty good predictor of first-year law school performance. When used alone, it doesn't tell us anything except how you did on a Saturday morning, or how rough a Friday night you had. Okay, so the LSAT alone tells me nothing. GPA alone is an indication of 30 to 35 professors that you've had over 4 or 5 years that you had as an undergrad. What is a recommendation? They're reflections of you based on whoever wrote the letter. And they don't know your life. They don't know everything there is to know about you. So that personal statement gives you the chance to tell us directly from you what you want us to know about you and why you want to go to law school. And the emphasis is on personal. Your personal statement, you shouldn't worry about. When you're writing it, don't worry about what he says. Don't you worry about what she says, and you shouldn't worry about what she says. Okay? The emphasis is on personal. We want to know what makes you tick. Okay? Your LSAT and GPA are some imperfect indicators of what's up here in your brain and your ability to do critical analysis. But the personal statement tells me what's in your heart. LSAT and GPA, what's in your head will get you in, but your heart will get you through. Believe me, your heart will get you through. Key points to remember. This is not the opportunity to rehash your resume. We'll get copies of your resume. Some schools will ask for a resume. Don't rehash your resume. This will be the committee's first impression of you, since most law schools do not conduct interviews. So consider the personal statement to be a written interview. Any job I've had that's been worth anything, I've gone into it and I've had to have an interview. And I've gone into that interview saying, okay, if What's your name? Vladimir? Okay, if Vladimir, what's your last name? Tobor. If Mr. Tobor, I'm not going to go in and say, hey, Vladimir, how you doing? I'm a job candidate. No, you're Mr. Tobor. If Mr. Tobor interviews me, I'm going to go into that interview saying, okay, if he forgets everything there is to know about me, he's going to remember these three things. Okay, three strengths. I'm self-motivated, I can work with others, and I have good analytical skills. Whatever it is, each person's going to have a different set of things that they consider strengths. So I'm going to try, in each of my responses to his interview questions, I'm going to try to build one of my strengths into my answer. Answer his question, and then try to show how my answer is a reflection of one of my strengths. That's what the personal statement is for. If you go into the personal statement and say, okay, they've got 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 of these things to read, what are the 2 or 3 things that I really, really, really want them to remember? That's what you want to put in the personal statement. Finally, consider it to be your first writing assignment. I've worked at 3 different law schools over the 27 years that I've been in the law school admissions world. Each committee has either had a clinical faculty member or a legal writing instructor on the committee during that year. Each time. The clinical faculty members and the legal writing instructors are the 2 groups that will really hammer your writing skill. They will really take a close look at it. So you need to write this thing well, because there will be some people there who will really break it down and focus on it a lot. Okay? Let me go back quickly to the interviews. There's a lot of talk right now about the use of the LSAT, whether it's going to be required or optional. Some schools are thinking they're going to have test optional. Some people are thinking of using the GRE or the GMAT, all kinds of things. I would not be surprised if more emphasis was placed on interviews. This is a side note, so I'm kind of going off what I said. I'm not going to talk about things that are kind of secondary because I don't have a lot of time. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how the focus on interviews develops. Now, an interview does not take the place of an LSAT. LSAT is an indicator of academic ability, okay, for the first year of law school. Interviews take care of your motivation, your perseverance, your communication skills, and your interpersonal skills. So the interview is not going to take the place of the LSAT, but I wouldn't be surprised if some schools started to look a little more at interviewing. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Here, now we're getting into even more meat. This is the key. My acronym for writing the LSAT is PREP. P-R-E-P. This is not new. I didn't create it, but it's something I read a long, long time ago, and I just began to think about that acronym more and more, and somehow it just integrated itself into my personal statement presentation. This acronym, this page here, could represent a page in your personal statement. The first P stands for point, and that's where I want you to make your point. Remember I said I made up 3 strengths. Self-motivated, work with others, have good analytical skills. Remember that? Okay. The first point you want to make is I'm self-motivated. You make your point. Then you want to tell the admissions committee why it's important that we know about it. Don't assume that we know why being self-motivated is important. You have to tell us why you think it is important for you and how it's going to help you in law school. Okay? Tell us the reasons why it's important that we know about it. The E stands for examples. Examples of what you learned from those experiences that made you self-motivated. Let's say you had an extracurricular activity. It could be a club, a team. It could be church work, school work. It could be some volunteer work. It could be a professional job that you've had. That reflects the examples that show that you are self-motivated. Then the final thing is make your point again and tell us how it will help you and make you a successful law school student, a better lawyer, and a better problem solver. Okay, prep. Make your point. Tell us the reasons why it's important that we know about that point. Give some examples of what you learned from the experiences that led to that point. And then make your point again and tell us how it's going to make you a better lawyer, better problem solver. Here's one point, page 1. And then the second one could be, I work with others very well, okay? Page 2, I work with others very well. I think this is important because here's some examples of what I learned from some of my activities that develop that skill. And here's how working with others is going to make me a better law school student, better lawyer, better citizen. Okay, there's an outline for page 2. Page 3, have great analytical skills. Go through the same exercise. Prep. When you're thinking of that first P in prep, here are some things you can think about. Think about your education, your work experience, your activities, maybe some personal experiences that you've had that involve legal issues. When you're trying to think of what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that I want to say about myself, here are some examples of categories you can kind of think about. Education, work experience, activities, personal experience. The reasons why these facts are important. How have your various experiences helped you grow? What do they demonstrate about your abilities? Do they show your interests? Those are some things you can think about when you're trying to think of the reasons why you think it's important you know about it. Right there. Again, send me an email. I will send you a copy of this PowerPoint. So if you haven't written it all down, don't worry about it. Examples of the lessons learned. You had some activities that increased or made these strengths in you notable. Here are some things that you may have learned from those things, from those activities. Analytical ability. You enhanced your writing ability. You enhanced and increased your motivation. Your organizational skills became better. Leadership skills, compassion, self-confidence. Those are some things that you can talk about what you learned from those experiences and how they are going to help you be a successful student, better lawyer, better problem solver. Okay? Now, here, this very last bullet point, how will law school X be a good fit for you to prepare for your career? Some schools, in fact, I'd say most schools don't care about that. I do. I like to see that someone has done their homework on the school that I work for, even if it's just take a quick look at the website. And it's so easy now to get information about schools versus when I was applying to schools in the late 70s and early 80s. So just do your homework and tell us why you think that school is important for your long-term success. Now, one thing you need to be careful here, if you say, I'm going to be a perfect fit for Georgetown, and you send University of Iowa Georgetown's personal statement, I'm going to give you a real easy way to get to Georgetown. I'm going to turn you down. So be very careful and make sure you're sending Georgetown's personal statement to Georgetown and John Marshall's personal statement to John Marshall, etc. Do not send Georgetown's personal statement to George Washington. Okay? Be very careful about that. Which leads to this. Check your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation, and your capitalization carefully. I know it's obvious, but you'd be surprised at the personal statements that we see where it's pretty clear that the applicant didn't even look at this. They type something up quickly, hit submit, send it to us, and it looks terrible. Have several people review your personal statement. Make sure those people are not your parents or your uncle or your aunt. They're wonderful folks. They have a vested interest in your success. My mother is 88 years old. She still thinks I'm pretty cool. Although she thinks her granddaughter, my daughter, is even cooler. I've had a lot of people who say, you know, if I know the grandchildren are going to be this much fun, I would have skipped the mother-father part, just going right to the grandchild part. Well, there's a little something has to happen before you get the grandchild. Okay. So have several people review your personal statement. I suggest you get friends, those types of friends that you really trust and can tell you that you're full of it, and you'll still be friends when they're done telling you that you're full of it. You know, we all have those friends. We have friends, then we have those friends who can tell you you are crazy. And they can slap you around intellectually and verbally, and when it's all said and done, you know they're right. Okay? That's who you want to write your personal statement. Do not be afraid of the feedback. Stars love feedback. Proofread the final version before you send it, and make sure the document reflects what you want us to know about you. Once again, the emphasis is on personal. Follow the directions specific to the particular law school that you want to apply to. Most law schools are going to give you directions as to how long the personal statement ought to be. It should be single-spaced, double-spaced. I don't know if too many that worry about the font type, so I'm not going to worry about that. But follow the directions, okay? Reread thousands of these every year. If you don't follow the directions, you're going to have a problem being a good lawyer, because the law is a very, it's based on a lot of directives from the court, from a lot of things in the system. So type it, utilize double spacing, follow the length guidelines given by the school, and remember this: the thicker the file, the thicker the applicant. That was something that was told to me and a group of us by Al Quirk, the retired director of admissions at Dartmouth College. Dartmouth is my undergraduate alma mater. I loved Dartmouth. I had a great time there. Worked my butt off, but I had a great time. And when I came out of school, I had a couple of job opportunities and decided to be an undergraduate admissions officer at Dartmouth before deciding what I was going to do next. And one of the things Al told us was that the thicker the folder, the thicker the applicant. What he meant was this: if we ask for a 3-page personal statement, and you send me one that is, I think my personal record is 22 pages, there's a problem. If I ask for 2, no more than 3 letters of recommendation, and I get 17 letters of recommendation, there's a problem. And the problem is you have a bad LSAT, a bad GPA, a criminal history, or you're just plain strange. You're strange. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. Law school is not designed to fix strange. They're designed to help strange. Strange has issues, but not designed to fix strange. So, follow the directions and you'll be okay. And if there's any question, call the school. The admissions officers will tell you exactly how they feel. I'm pretty flexible. If I get a 4-page personal statement, I'm not going to bust your chops. I'm okay with it. But I know of a school here on the East Coast where they ask for a specific page length. If you go one sentence over that page length, they will not read it. In the old days, before we were able to read files online, if they asked for 3 pages and you had 3.5, they would literally tear off that half page, page 4. They'd literally tear it off and throw it out and just read pages 1 through 3. So if you didn't make your point for somewhere in the middle of pages 1 through 3, too bad, so sad, tip the waiter, enjoy the meal, good luck, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to see it. So it's important to follow those directions. Now, the personal statement is designed to tell us why you want to go to law school. This is very important. Focus your personal statement on telling us why you want to get a law degree and how a law degree is going to be the school or the type of degree that will give you tools to solve certain problems. Very important. Then you have the optional addendum and the diversity statement, which is a very different thing. I like to use the diversity statement and the optional addendum, and whenever I think about it, I think about this quote from Maya Angelou. Stand up straight and realize who you are, that you tower over your circumstances. In everyone's life, and I don't care who you are or what you look like, in everyone's life, there is something that happens where you really have to stand up, remember who you are, and be strong in the face of adversity. As my father, who was a Baptist minister, said, as many people have said, we are guided more by faith than by sight. And there are many times in your lives, and it will happen again, where you're going to be guided more by your faith. Faith in something. Your parents, some other higher power. Doesn't matter. Faith is going to guide you more than your sight will. And this is what the diversity statement and the addendum are all about. The optional addendum is used to describe those character-building experiences. These are examples of sustained motivation and perseverance that may not necessarily be driving you to go to law school. Okay? It may not necessarily be driving you to go to law school. I'll give you another good example. And again, I'm going to use my own personal life experiences because it's easier to talk about. I am old enough to have integrated 2 schools in my life. One in Hartsville, South Carolina in 1968, and one in Greenwich, Connecticut in 1970. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. I was born in Brooklyn. Grew up in Greenwich. Spent most of my life, except for the 3 years in South Carolina, spent most of my life living within 50 miles of New York City. So I know the city. Even in Greenwich, Connecticut in 1970, there was a private school up there that had to figure out a way. I guess I was the kid. Now, each one of those experiences had some unique challenges that came with them that I resolved. I would probably get thrown in jail now for the way I resolved them, but damn if it didn't work. Okay. But if I wrote a personal statement about law school, my personal statement would talk about why I want to use law school or my law degree to be in higher education law. I wouldn't really talk about desegregation and all that, even though it is an issue. It is still an issue in many school districts. I would write my personal statement telling the committee why I want to use my law degree in higher education law. And then I'd write an addendum that talks about desegregation of schools and my role in it, at least in the communities that I lived in at the time. And I would use that optional addendum to say, or diversity statement to say, here's something that really isn't driving me to go to law school, but you need to know this about me. I had this unique experience of having desegregated 2 schools in my life. This may be a reflection of my motivation and my perseverance and my ability to stick to it, even when the majority of the people in the community I'm in say you can't do it. That's, in a nutshell, what that optional addendum would be. Each one of you is going to have something in your lives where you have to stand up and say, I'm going to stick with it. I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but I'm on my way. I'm going to be better for it. The world's going to be better for it. Okay? You can talk about the educational benefits of diversity, obstacles overcome, or badges of courage, history or poor standardized test taking. You can write an addendum about that. Just quickly about the educational benefits of diversity, and I'm going to address this a little bit later in about probably 2 minutes. The box you check, I know this came up in the panel presentation about the one before the break. I've been doing this, being the chief admissions officer for 27 years. I challenge anyone, not just in this room, but in this entire city, to show me 2 people who got in because of the box they checked under my watch. And I say 2 because I like to see you sweat over the first one. I like to see people sweat when I know I got it. I don't care what box you check. The box is optional. Don't check any box because no one really cares about the box. It's the educational benefits of diversity and the richness of the class discussion that you're going to add. That's what's most important. I'll talk about that a little bit later, about 2 minutes. Okay. Criminal issues. Each school is going to have you are going to have to check this box. It's a yes or a no. And, yeah. And you're going to have to say whether or not you have any kind of criminal history or irregularity or misconduct. Now, read this question carefully because some schools are going to ask if you have any convictions. And if you have any convictions, you're going to have to give a full explanation for that. Other schools are going to ask for everything. Even if you were charged and the charges were dropped, if the charges were, or your record was expunged, if you were put on probation, if you went into some deferred program, they're going to ask for anything and everything that happened. Read the question carefully. Each school is going to ask a question about this, but each school is going to be interested in different things. Again, some are going to worry about convictions, some are going to worry about everything, including convictions. So be careful when you answer that question. Separate the personal statement from the optional addendum, okay? Personal statement is designed to tell us why you want to go to law school. Optional addendum is designed to tell us about what I call those badges of courage, those character building experiences. Now, if your character building experience, for example, in my situation, if my sole motivation for going to law school involves desegregation of schools, then yes, I will put my personal experience with that into my personal statement. Okay, so if you have a personal thing, what I call that badge of courage, that is driving you to go to law school, then put it in the personal statement. But if it isn't, make it an optional addendum thing. Okay, put it in a separate document. There's no penalty for not submitting an addendum, and excuses are not welcome. My attitude to this is, you may be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's one thing. But if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you still decide to do something wrong, then the concept of free will kicked in. You had a choice to make, and you made the wrong choice. So you need to explain that. And don't try to make an excuse for it. Say, well, if I hadn't done this, if I hadn't done that. Well, you had a choice. You did it. You had a choice. Okay. Talk a little bit more about the checking of the box. And I'm going to give you a little history as to why most schools will look at the world this way. Race per se is not as important as the educational benefits of diversity. Race may shape a person's life, experience, or add context to the rest of the criteria that is reviewed. And your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, ethnic background, religious affiliation, there are a lot of things that unfortunately are going to be held against you. We know that. And that has to be addressed. But you can address it in either a personal statement or the optional addendum. Here are just a few things that we look at when we consider the educational benefits of diversity. And I think the length of this list will surprise you. I'll try not to go through all of them. But academic or professional abilities not reflected in the GPA. Let's say you have a 2.9 GPA, but you have a 3.9 in some really tough courses, or courses that emphasize writing, or courses that involve something dealing with legal education. Your GPA Q may be low, but there's certain parts of that GPA that may be really, really high. So that's an indication of where your academic or professional abilities may be there. It's just that Q GPA may not reflect it. Disabilities or serious health factors, extracurricular activities, work commitments that involve family or financial circumstances, graduate degree, public service commitments, law-related employment experience. Paralegals are great in law school because they understand what lawyers have to go through, and in fact, many of them do the writing with the lawyers. The lawyers will craft an outline or something, but it's paralegals that actually do a lot of the writing. So paralegals do well in law school, especially in legal writing. Leadership in groups that are historically underrepresented. Educational or socioeconomic disadvantage. Language other than English, or ESL, English as a second language. Unusual motivation and perseverance to overcome obstacles in the study of law. Other relevant information that relates to an applicant's qualification or academic potential. Race is one part of a huge piece of the puzzle. And here's why we look at that. Back in 2003, by the way, how many of you have heard me speak before? Okay. There are 3 or 4 of you who may have heard me talk about this before, but I'm going to bring this presentation or this example up again. Back in 2003, there was a famous, now famous, Supreme Court case. And it came, and still does, come under the title of an affirmative action case. After doing enrollment management for 32 years, I can honestly tell you that I have no idea what affirmative action is anymore. And I started doing it in 1979. That's when I started doing undergrad admissions work. 1 year after the Bakke decision, which may be the most famous Supreme Court affirmative action case ever. So, it's evolved into something that's just strange and different from what it was originally supposed to be. But one of the cases came up in 2003. It involved the University of Michigan. The University of Michigan Law School and University of Michigan's undergraduate program were both being sued by 2 separate people. these two different people had filed suit saying that they had not been offered admission to University of Michigan because of their race. They happened to be Caucasian, and they felt that someone, they don't know who, but someone who was not Caucasian got in. The undergraduate program, I'm going to make the long story short here, the undergraduate program at the University of Michigan lost its suit because what they were doing was they were adding points, automatically adding points to people who were Black, Hispanic, Native American. That's wrong. Even those of us who've been doing this for a long time, and I know my colleague at University of Michigan Law School, and we talked about this back then. We were looking at this going, oh, you guys are fried. You're done. If that's what you were doing, you can't do that. You can't automatically add points to an index or points to some magical number because of someone's race. The University of Michigan Law School won its case because they were holistic in their decision-making process. They read the entire file, they looked at the academic and the non-academic factors, and then made a decision. You're in or you're not in, based on having reviewed the entire file. Sandra Day O'Connor, who ironically was a Reagan appointee and the first woman on the U.S. Supreme Court, wrote the deciding opinion. And the opinion is rather lengthy, but the message that came from that is the following, and it's in bold here. Making decisions based solely on numbers is just as bad as making decisions based solely on race or ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or any other category you can think of. And that is the decision that is held up. That, along with the 1978 Bakke decision, has held up through numerous lawsuits. Making decisions based solely on someone's race is just as bad as making decisions based solely on the fact that you have a wonderful LSAT. Turn another way. I could get sued for admitting someone who has a 179 LSAT, or 180, which is a perfect score, and is just a total loser in every other way. So, the box you check, go ahead. Whatever you decide is fine. But we are going to try to evaluate what you're going to bring to the classroom. The richness of that class discussion. And you need to tell us about that in either the personal statement or in the optional addendum, or the diversity statement. Okay. Let's see. I probably have time for maybe, if you have any questions, perhaps 5 minutes worth of questions. But I want to get you guys over across the hall. There's a room over here. There's a room down the hall where you have probably 80 to 100 law schools here that want to talk to you. So feel free to come and ask me a question. About 5 minutes worth. There's some microphones here. And if you want to go to the fair, that's okay too. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Y'all take care. Email me and I'll send a copy of this to you. I have to check this box. It's a yes or a no. And yeah. And you're going to have to say whether or not you have any kind of criminal history or irregularity or misconduct. Now, read this question carefully because some schools are going to ask if you have any convictions. And if you have any convictions, you're going to have to give a full explanation for that. Other schools are going to ask for everything. Even if you were charged and the charges were dropped, if the charges were, or your record was expunged, if you were put on probation, if you went into some deferred program, they're going to ask for anything and everything that happened. Read the question carefully. Each school is going to ask a question about this, but each school is going to be interested in different things. Again, some are going to worry about convictions, some are going to worry about everything, including convictions. So be careful when you answer that question. Separate the personal statement from the optional addendum, okay? Personal statement is designed to tell us why you want to go to law school. Optional addendum is designed to tell us about what I call those badges of courage, those character-building experiences. Now, if your character-building experience, for example, in my situation, if my sole motivation for going to law school involves desegregation of schools, then yes, I will put my personal experience with that into my personal statement. Okay, so if you have a personal thing, what I call that badge of courage, that is driving you to go to law school, then put it in the personal statement. But if it isn't, make it an optional addendum thing. Okay, put it in a separate document. There's no penalty for not submitting an addendum, and excuses are not welcome. My attitude to this is, you may be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's one thing. But if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you still decide to do something wrong, then the concept of free will kicked in. You had a choice to make, and you made the wrong choice. So you need to explain that. And don't try to make an excuse for it. Say, well, if I hadn't done this, if I hadn't done that. Well, you had a choice. You did it. You had a choice. Okay. Talk a little bit more about the checking of the box. And I'm going to give you a little history as to why most schools will look at the world this way. Race per se is not as important as the educational benefits of diversity. Race may shape a person's life, experience, or add context to the rest of the criteria that is reviewed. And your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, ethnic background, religious affiliation, there are a lot of things that unfortunately are going to be held against you. We know that. And that has to be addressed. But you can address it in either the personal statement or the optional addendum. Here are just a few things that we look at when we consider the educational benefits of diversity. And I think the length of this list will surprise you. I'll try not to go through all of them. But academic or professional abilities not reflected in the GPA. Let's say you have a 2.9 GPA, but you have a 3.9 in some really tough courses, or courses that emphasize writing, or courses that involve something dealing with legal education. Your GPA Q may be low, but there's certain parts of that GPA that may be really, really high. So that's an indication of where your academic or professional abilities may be there. It's just that that Q GPA may not reflect it. Disabilities or serious health factors, extracurricular activities, work commitments that involve family or financial circumstances, graduate degree, public service commitments, law-related employment experience. Paralegals are great in law school because they understand what lawyers have to go through, and in fact, many of them do the writing of the lawyers. The lawyers will craft an outline or something, but it's paralegals that actually do a lot of the writing. So paralegals do well in law school, especially in legal writing. Leadership in groups that are historically underrepresented. Educational or socioeconomic disadvantage. Language other than English, or ESL, English as a second language. Unusual motivation and perseverance to overcome obstacles in the study of law. Other relevant information that relates to an applicant's qualification or academic potential. Race is one part of a huge piece of the puzzle. And here's why we look at that. Back in 2003, by the way, how many of you have heard me speak before? Okay. There are 3 or 4 of you who may have heard me talk about this before, but I'm going to bring this presentation or this example up again. Back in 2003, there was a now famous Supreme Court case. And it came, and still does, come under the title of an affirmative action case. After doing enrollment management for 32 years, I can honestly tell you that I have no idea what affirmative action is anymore. And I started doing it in 1979. That's when I started doing undergrad admissions work. 1 year after the Bakke decision, which may be the most famous Supreme Court affirmative action case ever. So, it's evolved into something that's just strange and different from what it was originally supposed to be. But one of the cases came up in 2003. It involved University of Michigan. University of Michigan Law School and University of Michigan's undergraduate program were both being sued by 2 separate people. These 2 different people had filed suit saying that they had not been offered admission to University of Michigan because of their race. They happened to be Caucasian. And they felt that someone, they don't know who, but someone who was not Caucasian got in. The undergraduate program, I'm going to make the long story short here, the undergraduate program at the University of Michigan lost its suit because what they were doing was they were adding points, automatically adding points to people who were Black, Hispanic, Native American. That's wrong. Even those of us who've been doing this for a long time, and I know my colleague at University of Michigan Law School, and we talked about this back then. We were looking at this going, oh, you guys are fried. You're done. If that's what you were doing, you can't do that. You can't automatically add points to an index or points to some magical number because of someone's race. The University of Michigan Law School won its case because they were holistic in their decision-making process. They read the entire file, they looked at the academic and the non-academic factors, and then made a decision. You're in or you're not in, based on having reviewed the entire file. Sandra Day O'Connor, who ironically was a Reagan appointee and the first woman on the U.S. Supreme Court, wrote the deciding opinion. And the opinion is rather lengthy, but the message that came from that is the following, and it's in bold here. Making decisions based solely on numbers is just as bad as making decisions based solely on race or ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or any other category you can think of. And that is the decision that is held up. That, along with the 1978 Bakke decision, has held up through numerous lawsuits. Making decisions based solely on someone's race is just as bad as making decisions based solely on the fact that you have a wonderful LSAT. Turn another way. I could get sued for admitting someone who has a 179 LSAT, or a 180, which is a perfect score, and is just a total loser in every other way. So, the box you check, go ahead. Whatever you decide is fine. But we are going to try to evaluate what you're going to bring to the classroom. The richness of that class discussion. And you need to tell us about that in either the personal statement or in the optional addendum, or the diversity statement. Okay. Let's see. I probably have time for maybe, if you have any questions, perhaps 5 minutes worth of questions. But I want to get you guys over across the hall. There's a room over here. There's a room down the hall where you have probably 80 to 100 law schools here that want to talk to you. So feel free to come and ask me a question. About 5 minutes worth. There's some microphones here. And if you want to go to the fair, that's okay too. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Y'all take care. Email me and I'll send a copy of this to you.